truth will break your chains. We have the key. Open your...
So I'm gonna try and do this video pretty quick because the kids are downstairs playing quietly and little one is taking a nap. So we're gonna try and get into this rather quickly. So I had Kaylin July 2014, and after my 6-week appointment, my doctor said, you're pretty fertile, so do you want to do birth control? Are you guys going to use protection, or are you guys wanting to get pregnant soon? And I told him that we're just going to see what happens. And to my shock, in October we found out we were expecting baby number 2. So I made a 10-week appointment, just as I had done with Kaylin, and at that appointment he told me that they had come out with a blood test that you can do. It is covered by some insurance, it's not covered by all insurance, it's pretty pricey if insurance doesn't cover it, and my insurance did in fact cover it, so I wanted to do it. It would tell you the gender in a week, and I'm impatient, so I wanted to know right away. So we went through with that, and every single day when my phone rang, I got so excited, I'd look at it and be let down. It was bill collectors or something else. So when I finally got the call, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm having another girl. I was excited, but it was so shocking to me because it did not seem like I was gonna have another girl. She had given me no morning sickness. I didn't feel bad. I felt amazing. I had good energy, and I don't know, I just felt really good. So I was really shocked because I always heard that you feel terrible while you're pregnant with girls because they're taking all of your beauty and this, that, and the other, wives' tales. And with boys, you feel great. And I don't know if that's any better. We'll do it like this. So I thought it was a boy, but to my shock, it was a girl. And so we wanted like a natural name, and so we talked about Brooke. And we already had Kaylin, and I didn't want to just do plain Brooke, so we did Brooklyn. So we did the name Brooklyn, and I called her my little Brook-a-bug because she was my wiggly little worm always in my belly. My husband nicknamed her Caterpillar, and she was definitely our wiggly little worm. She was our bug. So fast forward, we did the 20-week ultrasound. Everything was great. She was healthy, long, measuring just like her sister did, doing perfect. She was head down. I don't think she ever really was breech or anything like that, but she stayed head down, and she always had her hands by her face. And remember that when I tell you how the labor goes. So her hands were always by her face and everything like that. So almost all of her ultrasound pictures, you can see a little hand by her face. And so at 26 weeks, I ended up getting really, really, really sick. And I couldn't hold anything down. I was freezing. I had like 3 comforters on me. I was freezing, but I was starting to sweat horribly, and I was just burning up to the touch. So I had my husband take me to the hospital, and they ran some tests, and they're like, it's inconclusive. There's nothing that we can see here, so it's got to be just a viral thing. You should feel better in a few days. We gave you an IV, so that should help hydrate you. Come back if anything it changes. So I was doing pretty good. I was trying to drink things, but I just couldn't drink anything. Like, I felt so crummy. So I was trying to be like, it's good, I'm okay, but it just wasn't getting any better. So the next day, it was still misery. I wasn't getting any better at all. I hadn't been able to keep anything down. From the moment we left the hospital, I was throwing up again, and they gave me, I think it was like Zofran or something like that to help with the nausea. It did nothing. Like, it didn't even touch the nausea I had. So I say so a lot, I guess. I'm catching on to that, watching my videos back. We went to the hospital the next day and they admitted me, and I was scared. I was like, well, they didn't admit me yesterday. Why are they admitting me today? Like, what's changed? And it came back in my blood work the day before that I had a UTI, kidney, bladder infection. Why they didn't treat for those, not a clue, but they didn't. And so they started me on antibiotics through an IV, and they were also giving me IV fluids. I was freezing cold, so I wanted blanket after blanket after blanket, and I kept asking them for blankets, and they're like, no, you have a fever, you cannot have a blanket. So we did antibiotics we did 2 or 3 rounds of antibiotics through an IV, and they were giving me lots of fluids. The blankets they would not give me. I was freezing. They gave me 1 sheet and they're like, we need to put cold rags on you, we need to bring your temperature down. My temperature was like at 104. Like, they were not happy that I was just trying to cover up. So they got my temperature to go down. They wanted me to not cover up. Even when I went home, they told my husband, don't give her a comforter, she can have a sheet, but if she starts to like shiver and say that she's really, really cold, get some cold rags and put them on her. It was terrible. Terrible. So he had to go back to work the next day. My sister was going on a vacation and I was house sitting for her, so I was at her house with my toddler at that point, trying to just get through the motions of every day, taking care of her. And I was so sick. For a week and a half, we pretty much just sat on a couch, and I would get up and feed her, of course, and make her food, but that drained me. I would get up and make her breakfast of chopped up fruit and some toast, and she'd be eating it, and I'd be sitting at the table with her, exhausted, trying to stay awake. And then I'd have to go lay back down with her, and she'd hang out and watch TV and play with toys on the couch with me, but it was draining to do anything. So it took a week and a half to get over that, and once I got back to not being sick, I was great. Like, I had no symptoms of being pregnant yet again, just a baby moving around in my belly, and that was it. So it still was so crazy to me how different this pregnancy was. So we get to where I am 39 weeks and I asked to be induced. I had very bad anxiety of I was going to go into labor and nobody was going to get home to me, that nobody was going to be able to watch my daughter. And I was like, I have a child that's almost 1 year old. I don't want to be dragging her to the hospital while I'm in labor and have my husband have to try and meet me there. And it was just so much all at once. I just couldn't do it. So my doctor agreed to inducing me, and my parents were set up to watch my daughter, and my sister, my mom, my best friend, and my husband and I went to the hospital again to start the induction on June 26th. We got there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we started the Pitocin, the IV water, or saline, whatever, and then shortly after, my epidural. My epidural, I am so grateful that I got this time, because I ended up needing it more than I could have ever thought I would. So we started pushing around 5:30, I want to say. It's a little fuzzy. So we started pushing, and 45 minutes later, we're getting nowhere. About 5 pushes in, she got her hand out. And she was not trying to pull her hand in. She was not trying to move her hand so her head would go. She was just hand up. She was good to go. So we tried to get her to move her hand. My doctor was able to hold her hand. My best friend took a picture of her hand. The nurses were super shocked that she had her hand out, like they'd never seen that before. And I guess only like 8% of people ever have this happen to them out of 1,000, I think my doctor said. So she got her hand out, and he was like trying to tickle her hand. He was trying to put like cold water on her hand to get her to pull her hand back so I could vaginally deliver her. Nothing worked. After 45 minutes, he went and got another doctor to get a second opinion on what to do, because he didn't want me to sit there and have to keep trying to labor and end up in a C-section in 4 hours. So we got this other doctor in here, and he was like, no, I don't even know why you have her pushing this long. As soon as the hand came out, I don't even know why you tried. This is a C-section. There's no options. Which was really frustrating, that he just didn't care to try and go about any other routes. He was just done. It's C-section. My mom then starts to get the teary eyes and the tears. My sister is crying. My best friend has tears. I look at my husband and he's looking at me like, oh bleep. And so he gets the scrubs on and they wheel me off to the operation room. They took me in first and told me how great it was that I had an epidural, because they could then just numb me through that and through my IV, and they didn't have to put me to sleep. If you don't have an epidural and you end up in a C-section, they normally just put you to sleep at that point, because it's an emergency C-section. My doctor was really quick on getting me sterilized and prepped for surgery. He gets me prepped and I'm crying. I want my husband. They tell me that they can't do that until they make the initial incision and that I can't feel it. They then brought him in. I was laying there looking at him. He was holding my hand and I was crying. I was so scared of something happening to me during the C-section. I wanted to be sure that nothing was wrong with her arm, because at that point I had realized that for 45 minutes I was pushing and her arm was above her head, and so it was pushing at her shoulder, and they told me that if I would have vaginally delivered her, that I could have broken her collarbone or her shoulder, and that there was a lot of risks that would have gone on if I would have vaginally delivered her at that point, and that scared me. So after they had done the initial cut and we were sitting there, it was like instantly I heard her cry, and they pulled her up to where I could see her quickly, but then they took her to clean her up and everything. My husband went with them. They brought her over to me as quickly as they could while they were stitching me up and let me see her, and my husband was holding her. The lady that was in there took a quick picture of us as our first family photo. I was so heartbroken that I couldn't hold her. I just wanted to hold her, but I couldn't. C-sections, yeah, I had never done any research on them. I knew nothing about them or the healing process or anything, and I quickly realized how much of a bad idea that was. That was the picture of our first family photo. After they stitch you up and everything else, they put you in recovery. My recovery room was 2 to 4 hours, depending on how I was with my stability. They brought her, of course, with us, and I remember looking at her and I thought she had such a fat umbilical cord. Like, Kaylin's was teeny tiny, Brooklyn's was fat. I was like, dang, like, does that make any difference? And it obviously does, because Brooklyn has stayed like my chunk. She was born 7 pounds 5 ounces, and she is a year younger than her sister and stays to the same weight her sister does, and she's like 3 inches shorter than her sister. But I could have visitors come back to the recovery room with me after an hour of me being there. So I probably had my C-section exactly, she was born exactly at like 7:48, I believe is the exact same time. I know it's in the 7:40s. And she was perfect. So my family came back and saw me probably around 9:30, and then we didn't get into our room until 10 or 11. And at that point, the cafeteria had been closed, and they told me to eat something light. So they were offering me crackers and stuff. And anybody that's gone through a full day of labor, when they offer you crackers, you're just like, I haven't eaten all day. I want a meal. So my husband went against my nurse's orders and went and got us some fast food. Not the best idea, but my doctor told me, you can eat whatever you want, Jessica. Just take it slow and don't overdo it. I didn't eat a lot that night because I was so out of it from everything, just trying to digest what had all happened. And then the nurse comes in, she's like, well, she's hungry. Do you want to try and latch her, or do you just want to do a bottle? And I'm like, I'll try and latch her. Like, I want to breastfeed, yeah. And they latch her. They had not been giving me my pain pills on time exactly. And so we were trying to do like catch up at that point for the C-section. And it was so painful when she first latched, because you have the after contractions. And oh, I was done. I unlatched her immediately and was done. I was like, no, give me a bottle. I don't want to do this. Tiny's starting to wake up. So I was scared. I couldn't do it. The pain was just overwhelming for me. And so we just went to a bottle. And she's perfectly healthy, and a fed baby is really what matters. I have gotten a lot of the whole entire, you need to breastfeed all of your children. It's not fair that you didn't breastfeed the first two. It's not like I can go back and breastfeed them now. So I don't know why that's even a conversation. And I've also gotten told in mommy groups on Facebook that C-sections are an easy way out. They're not. C-section is 100 times more painful than vaginal delivery. The recovery is extremely painful, along with, I had a 1-year-old and a newborn to take care of by myself after a C-section. So kind of really irks me when I hear the whole entire C-section is the easy way out. There's nothing easy about childbirth in the beginning, let alone C-sections. So go somewhere with that idea. I didn't breastfeed my first two children because I didn't know enough about it. I don't love them any less. I have the same bond with them as I do my 2-year-old that was breastfed, and now my 2-month-old that's being breastfed. They don't get some special kind of treatment because they were breastfed and the other two were not. I love them all equally. They're all still my baby girls. So it's kind of ridiculous when I hear the whole entire, do you love those ones more? Is that why you did it? No, I'm a mom. I love all my kids the same. Thank you. So after we were home from the hospital, it was really hard. I remember going to go lay in my bed, and I was so excited to lay in my bed because hospital beds aren't the greatest. When I laid in that bed, I cried so hard because our bed's high, and it hurt to do the stairs. It hurt to cough, sneeze. I was miserable. Anytime I made a certain movement, it just felt like my stomach was getting shredded. It was bad, but we did it. And my husband would hand me the baby when she needed to be fed. He would make her bottles for me, and I felt bad because he was getting up and going to work the next day, but he still was doing it. We went on for a few weeks of him having to help me with everything, but then I finally got it all by myself, and I felt so empowered because I did it. I made it through a C-section, and it might sound stupid to those who have had multiple C-sections, but that was my first one, and I was miserable with it. I would rather give birth 10 times vaginally than one C-section. But I would do anything for my child to be happy and healthy when they're born, so C-section was worth it. We went through our checkup at 6 weeks, and I did decide I wanted to be on birth control, and we were going to be done with children for probably 5 years. Well, my birth control I loved. I didn't have any spotting, breakthrough bleeding, nothing. Obviously I can't talk because that sounded really jarbled. But I didn't have any issues with it. I loved it. I felt great. My husband and I, for our 2-year anniversary in January, went to Estes Park. The girls ended up going up there with us, and we had a great time. But we all got super sick. But I was losing super good weight. Like, I'll insert some pictures right here that I felt super proud of myself from right after having her to September. So from June when having her to September, I looked totally different and I was loving it. And I hope that now after I've had Amber that the weight comes off like it did back then, because I was super proud of myself. So we kind of took it day by day. Recovering after a C-section is definitely a lot different. You will have the pain to where when you cough you want to hold your stomach, when you sneeze you want to hold your stomach, you won't want to do certain things. Like, my kids and I always like to do these like random dance parties. I couldn't do that for a while, but it went away slowly. It took a lot longer for me to feel more like myself after the C-section. I was never really self-conscious about the scar. It's really small and it's like that big, maybe? I don't know. It's not that big at all. It healed up really nicely. I didn't have any issues with it healing. I still don't have any issues with it. Sometimes I get a zapping feeling there, but that's nothing terrible. I can deal with it. And that's pretty much it. Like, we have had a hell of a 3 years with this little girl. She has had the best laugh. She has crazy killer blue eyes, which I'll insert a few pictures of her eyes. And I wouldn't change my little Brookabug for anything. Honestly, being a mom to her has completely been totally different from being a mom to Kaylin, because Kaylin is like my tomboy crazy and Brooklyn's like my gentle giant. She is such a sweet little lover. She doesn't like to fight with you or her sisters. She talks back here and there, but honestly not nearly as much as her other 2 sisters. She listens really well and she's just a sweetheart. Like, I have nothing bad to say about any of my children, but Brooklyn just takes the cake on. If anybody watches my kids, they always tell me, Brooklyn was so good. Brooklyn listened to anything. And the other 2, I don't hear that as often. Like, they're all good kids, but Brooklyn takes the cake on. She definitely listens the best and whatnot. But this little girl is hungry, so I'm going to end this vlog and feed the baby.
Picture everything you're fighting for.